there's an entire world of investing that you've probably never even considered. I mean, we talk about stocks all the time on this channel, sometimes options, almost never bonds, but we've never talked about a non-traditional investment that I made about a year and a half ago that is up 44% right now. It sounds crazy, but I bought an original copy of the Declaration of Independence that was printed in 1776. I know, that's kind of a strange flex, and it was like $2 million. So I actually pooled my money with some other people so we could buy it together. And here's the thing. Anyone can do the same because there's been a major shift in the way investors can get involved with collectibles. You no longer have to be an expert book collector to profit from a signed first edition of The Great Gatsby, or a car expert to trade and flip a rare car, or a wine guru to collect and trade some rare wines. I mean, art, watches, dinosaur fossils. If people collect it, you can now buy shares of it. And today on Dumb Money, we're going to talk to an expert in the field of rare collectibles. He's a co-founder and chief product officer of a company called Rally that turns these kind of one-of-a-kind items into investable assets. And we're going to explore the world of investments you never knew existed. We are Dumb Money.
Three friends who turned $30,000 into $30 million using nothing more than Twitter and a zero commission trading account.
The suits that work on Wall Street, they call those people the smart money. That's not us.
Our goal is to help level the playing field for everyday investors.
We are Dumb Money.
Hey there, Dave here along with Chris and Jordan. We are Dumb Money. Welcome to Dumb Money Live. Before we talk about collectibles, I do need to do my job as a YouTuber and collect as many likes as we possibly can. So if you haven't hit that thumbs up button yet, now is the time. It is completely free. And one thing I know is the value of a like can only go up. So get in early while you can. And while you're at it, I know that a bunch of people who watch our videos are not subscribers. We have a bit of a random schedule. You never know when we're going to make a video. So if you're not subscribed and you like this kind of content, there's a subscribe button with your name on it. Thank you. Go ahead and do that. Now on to collectibles. Chris, Jordan, I don't really consider myself a collectibles guy. I mean, I have a pretty big collection of vintage microphones. Chris talked me into buying a CryptoPunk once. But I bought that Declaration of Independence on a whim because it sounded cool. Chris, I know you're more of a collector, probably best known for your Pokemon card purchases, but you're involved in Collecticon and have a wall of vintage shoes behind you, but you don't really talk about your collectibles much. How'd you get into it?
I just honestly, I just like the vibe of the collecting sector, man. The people that are involved with it, you know, we do Collecticon 7 times a year. We have upwards of 15,000 people a show. They come in costumes. These people just like having fun, man. And it's just like, as for me, I love equities. Obviously, I'm a trader, but it's nice to kind of escape this world every once in a while, to touch things that are more tangible and interesting, where there's so much passion. And I had this crazy thesis on the long-term viability of the collectible market. And I could be completely whacked out of my mind for thinking this, but I kind of think of where we're going in the next 20 to 40 years with artificial intelligence and all of our jobs getting displaced and universal income and all humans having more time on their hands and actually us having more ability to do things that are discretionary in nature. And I kind of feel like the pandemic was a microcosm when we're all at home with a lot of extra money, right? And a lot of extra time. I kind of feel like once we get over this big hump, this recession that we're in, and AI kicks in and automation, if we can push forward 10, 15, 20 years, I actually think the collectibles market is going to grow exponentially. And Rally is such a fascinating company because so many of these collectibles, the really high-end ones, the ones that usually see the most appreciation, it's impossible to buy because they cost thousands to hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. But Rally does this fractional model to where for $10, you can buy a $2 million comic, right? Like one of the most famous comics in the world, like the Batman, right? That Rally bought. So I love this business model. I actually invested in Rally. I'm an early investor in the company Rally, full disclosure. And I've been wanting to get Rally on this show for a long time because this is an industry sector that no matter how little money you have, any person in the world can play in this market. We're not financial advisors. We're not advising you buy collectibles or sign up for Rally today, but like, I really love this, man. I just think it's fun. And I actually think, listen, like the rest of the market, collectibles have come down a lot the last 12 months. And this is an interesting time when you could buy, into some of these huge collectible markets for like 50 cents on the dollar, 60, 70 cents on the dollar to where they were a year ago.
What about you, Jordan? Did you invest in Rally? I didn't. We had the opportunity. I know Chris did, but
Did
you
we have
invest
the
in Rally?
opportunity? I don't remember. I don't know if I did or not. I don't think I
By the
did.
way, this is a stock certificate in a Lamborghini that I bought a fraction of when Rally literally when they first launched the company. I think this is like one of the first cars that they bought and auctioned off. And dude,
You went and
they
saw
actually
that car
sent
in
me.
person. You went to New York. We did that on our original Dumb Money channel as part of an episode. So we know that Chris is into collectibles. But
you can
Jordan, do you collect anything?
Before we bring Rob on, Dave, I was going to say, you can trade these. You don't just buy them and then wait until Rally sells it a year, 2, 3 years on the road. They actually open windows and you could trade your
you can trade
share.
it. It's a trading platform. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I went on and looked to see what my Declaration of Independence was worth, and it's up 44% from where I bought it.
And you can sell it this month. Like if you want, there'll be a window.
There's a sell button right there, and it's like a bid and ask system, just like the stock market. They literally have turned collectibles into stocks, and I think it's the coolest thing ever.
It really is.
Let's welcome our guest this morning. This is Rob Petrozzo. He's the co-founder of Rally, and it's an online platform. People can invest in and trade shares of rare and unique collectibles, watches, luxury items, cars. So, Rob, welcome to Dumb Money. Tell us just a little about your background and why you thought this whole Rally would be a good thing to start.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I don't have to say anything. You own the Declaration of Independence, and Chris gave literally our entire elevator pitch start to finish better than I can. So I'm done. You can shut it down.
Thanks for joining us, and that's going to be it for Dumb Money.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, it's not. When we started thinking about it, myself and Chris and Max, my co-founder, started thinking about what the future was going to look like. I don't think it was that different than the three of you. It was this concept where we have like a little bit of money we could put together and do something cool, but it was also don't get in front of a moving train. We started this business in 2014. We put it on paper. 2016, we incorporated. But it was pretty clear at that point, everything was changing. Like self-directed and like commission-free stock trading apps were starting to become a real thing. Coinbase was just starting to get moving in a way that if somebody asked you, how do I buy Bitcoin? You just say, download Coinbase and figure it out. Like if your mom texts you and starts asking you about certain investments, you know where to send them. So once that culture changed and you had young people with a little bit of discretionary money saying like, I want more access to these type of things that, only accredited investors have had access to in the past. Once that happened, we started looking at all of our individual things that we love, that we collect, that we talk about nonstop. And to be completely frank, we're all, myself, my co-founders, everybody here at Rally, we're all collectors of things, but we didn't have access to the best stuff. And you make mistakes buying stuff that you love early on that you think is going to be an investment. And I've been doing that, I'm the dumbest dumb money. I've been doing that since I'm 10 years old, basically, like buying comic books that are now garbage and baseball cards during this era where baseball cards are now worth nothing from like the 80s and 90s. And in my mind, I would find like a Michael Jordan card or a Shaquille O'Neal card, and I thought that was going to like pay for college. You know what I mean? I thought I was going to buy a house with that one day. You realize quick that's not the case. But as the information asymmetry switched up, as you start sort of paying more attention, you start, Googling things, ended up on Wikipedia, going down crazy rabbit holes and having conversations with people who collect the best stuff. You realize this whole world of collecting, and I want to say commoditizing collectibles, but not in like a weird combative way, in a way that the people that care about it and have the money have the best stuff. That economy has existed for hundreds of years. It's never existed at retail. It's never existed in a way where a regular person get access to that museum quality stuff, to the Declaration of Independence or a Honus Wagner rookie card. That for us was an opening that, nobody had really gotten into. We cared about a lot. The people around us cared about a lot. So we could have packaged it up and put it into an app. We're like, let's just do it. Now all of a sudden it's 7 years later, it's a business,
That's so cool. I noticed behind you, is that a Super Bowl trophy on your shelf? You really are a collectible. That's crazy.
A bunch of like weird random stuff. This is from we have a couple of friends on the Rams. This is from a year ago. This is from Mike Hoyt, who's was an offensive lineman. Now he plays on the line on defense. He had like a monster season too. He's been a big friend of the platform, and he showed up one day and was like, "Yo, we get 2. Do you want one?" I'm not supposed to say this, I don't think. But anyway, he said, "Do you want one?" So we wound up backdooring our way into the distribution of Lombardi trophies for players.
That is insane.
We're here in Dallas, and actually I bought last year. I tried to arb or when the Rams were in the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford went to our high school here in Dallas, and I bought one of his autographed rookie cards for a couple grand, 2,000-3,000, and it didn't play out too well. But I think there's something that people have to understand about collectibles. When you're in the collectible game long enough, you quickly learn that sometimes the very best strategy is to buy the best. To buy the best of something, right? Because often that thing at the very top of the food chain for whatever it happens to be, that whether it's cars, whiskey, watches, baseball, it doesn't matter. Buy the PSA 10, but buy the black label perfectly graded card, like the best of the best of the best, because that more often than not, it seems like those items have the most appreciation over time. But those are the items that are most difficult for regular collectors to own a piece of. And that's what I love about Rally. With Rally, you guys go out and you buy the best of the best, right? And then you allow regular people with $10 to own a piece of that, which is kind of like, it's quite honestly mind-blowing to me, like, that this exists right now. And obviously I know you guys are growing a lot, and the bigger you get, the cooler stuff you're able to buy, right?
What are some of those, like, what are those most interesting, most valuable things that you've put on the Rally platform?
Yeah, I mean, well, to Chris's point, like, it's gotten, I don't want to say easier because it's never easy, but as we've grown as a business over the last 5 or 6 years, the need for us to like figure out and go through all the conversations and auction houses and like try and cold call people and try and get advisors and people who know the space to come in, that's dropped. So our ability to find great stuff has only gone up. It's also been a situation where thankfully, we had a credit line and we had cash. We could always buy along the way if we could see like an opportunistic point to purchase an asset outright. But we also have some advantages to other auction houses where if somebody comes in, wants to get their money a little bit quicker, doesn't want to pay a giant 25% VIG that you have to pay to the auction house, doesn't want to wait 6 to 7 months or sign some sort of non-compete where they can't bring it elsewhere, they'll consign to us, or they'll keep some of the equity and play the upside with the investors. So there's a lot more flexibility sometimes with somebody with something great to come to us. They also know that a community that really cares about it is often the people that are buying it. And they're the regular people who are talking about this stuff all day, every single day. They're not people who, buy $10 million paintings, tuck it in a Freeport, and no one ever sees it. They pass away 30 years later and their kids just sell it without ever seeing it. It's not that stuff. It's like having a connection to something really unique and really amazing. So the biggest and the most expensive stuff that's wound up on Rally, a lot of times has come through those like private relationships, things that we've built along the way and the relationships that we have. The Declaration of Independence was one of those. So that was something that was sold privately. It's been in 2 families. It started with the person who printed it in 1776 and ended with an engraver who was really well known all throughout like the East Coast and has in like history books and has stuff, a bunch of crazy stuff written about him. So those Declaration of Independence, for example, which was a $2 million IPO that we did a little over a year ago, we knew we always sort of isolate things that we know we want in a category. When it comes to history, that's a big category in Rally. We always wanted to go for like the best of the best, and we targeted a few things. One was a photograph of Abraham Lincoln, which is around 80 that exists. The one that we got, though, is signed by Abraham Lincoln, and he went on record saying it was the image that looked most like him. So it was the one that he kind of liked the most. So that's like a check mark for us automatically. That was an $80,000 IPO. Declaration of Independence, the same way. We wanted one. There's probably 20 or so from this era, from 1776, that wound up in individual towns or like literally were red town square. This is one that came from Exeter. It was one that, again, was in a very specific family, has very specific provenance. There was a crazy back and forth to get that. We had one of our sort of advisors, someone who's worked with us from day one on rare literature and historical documents, flying all over the world to sort of get their hands on it and make sure the deal can get done. By the time we got that, Constitution DAO was kind of in a spot where it was moving crazy. Crypto was in this spot where people are starting to move to tangible assets. Ken Griffin wound up buying that Constitution, and it set people in the Discord to say like, well, there's this other one on Rally. We weren't getting a little bit of TV coverage from it. It was this sort of perfect storm where we had the best example. It was super valuable. A lot of people didn't even know that those copies existed. They thought there was only that one that lived in the Rotunda in DC. And it became this funnel where everybody was buying $10 and $20 and $30 and $100 worth of the Declaration of Independence. And then it became this sort of benchmark for the platform too. It got a buyout offer that was like a hostile takeover that got turned down by investors. It kept trading. It's been super active and liquid since then. And now it's like, again, one of the keystones of our entire collection of history. So anytime that we could find that, a huge group of people or even a small group that's super into something and makes it a huge part of their life, whether it's vintage history or baseball cards or NFTs or anything, and we find the best in class museum quality asset, bringing those two things together doesn't require, a ton of like Instagram ads or a ton of promotion. It becomes word of mouth really quickly. That's always been what worked for us, especially for like the top of the top, the museum quality stuff.
Can you explain where it lives and how it actually works? Like, where is this Declaration of Independence? Can people that are invested in it see it? And also, what is the business model of Rally? Like, do you guys make a commit? I know some of these answers, but do you make a commission? How do you make money? Because this is a lot of work. I assume you're storing this stuff. Is there an exhibit?
Yeah, I'll start at the end. We're able, because again, we do this at scale now, and we have great relationships that we've developed for like 5 or 6 years. In the beginning, there were crazy one-time costs between legal, insurance, management, storage, all of that. We've gotten that to a point now where it's very, very close. It's the cheapest anyone's going to pay anywhere in the world, probably for stuff like this to be managed, insured, and sort of maintained along the way. We have a couple of facilities on the East Coast that we keep a lot of the assets in, but we're also sort of able to bring them all over the place. We need to do pop-ups. We have our museum space here in New York, the first of which was on Lafayette Street. We're opening our second space, which is our new kind of landmark HQ type space on Broadway, right off Howard Street. It'll be open next month, like 4,000, 5,000 square foot museum that's meant for like adults, for kids, for everything in between, where we'll rotate in and out. The most unique and the newest stuff on the platform will wind up being there. But we also do it in a way where, we want to make sure that if you have something great, it's being cared for appropriately too. So to keep it real, like the Declaration of Independence, it probably shouldn't be like hanging in my apartment, because I'm gonna mess that up. If I had that in my apartment sitting there on a wall somewhere, someone's gonna ask a question, I'm gonna take it out and show it to somebody. Like, I wouldn't be good at that. So keeping that where it's like in our facility, 24-hour concierge. When we need to move it around, we have really quick transportation. That it's vaulted when it needs to be. It's out when it needs to be. It's got all the appropriate sort of checks and balances. When we do any of these IPOs, there's a sourcing fee on top of it, oftentimes paid by the seller. So it's anywhere between 5% and 10%. And we do it in a way that we're always sort of tracking fair market value. We're able to sort of add that sourcing fee in during the IPO process while still giving the best deal to the seller and giving the best deal to the buyer, because it's not going to auction where sometimes there's 20 and 30% fees tacked on. Then long term for us, the way we've always envisioned this is that there's these experiences, there's sort of the premium features and premium tier inside the app that we're going to open up. There's stuff that we want to earn money for our users before asking for, is kind of the way I've always talked about it with our product team. So there's things now that we're releasing, like instant access to money for trading. So if you want to sort of come in and not wait for an ACH deposit to hit, we'll do like a small percentage of that deposit, and that'll be part of the revenue strategy for the secondary market. We're doing a bunch of things where if you want early access to deals or syndicate access to deals, that's going to be something that we'll have specific things where if you want to get in early, you have the option a la carte or through subscription to pay for it. That's all the stuff that we built up with our community over time. So we've always kind of, if you look on Twitter or you look on like Instagram or, the millions of people, like thousands of users have my cell phone number. They'll text me when there's a problem or when they want to see something. We've been really good, I think, from a customer service perspective of listening to our most active users, and they're accounting for like 75% of our roadmap right now. So when they say they want something, they also know they want us to be around as a business. And in the environment that you're in right now, revenue is key. So when they're like, why don't you give us, money quicker, we'll pay for it. It's like, all right, let's experiment with that. Let's talk to our users. Let's go through the dev process and see if it makes sense. And then we can roll that out. And nobody's looking at it like we're trying to make rips off them. We're doing what they ask and going in the direction and the path of least resistance to make everybody happy. That's always been the way we've thought about our revenue structure and the way we've thought about fees and the way we've thought about commissions going forward. But it also is a world where that's a race to the bottom. Everybody's going to have $0 commissions. There's no way to say, right now, everybody give us money. Like, we would never do that, because that's just something that's going to make users say, I'll find another alternative. And we're not trying to be in that boat either. We're trying to make sure there's always a free tier.
Do you guys have relationships with traditional auction houses? I would think they would be interested in the types of data that you have and the price discovery that happens on certain items.
Yeah, and that's part of the play too, long term. I think, we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we had a robust enough platform that data, wasn't outliers, that it was all meaningful. And I think that our relationships with the auction houses, especially so many of them have presence on the East Coast or in New York, and we're always in the conversation, whether it's like listing something on their platform or doing a deal in the background where if there's a private seller or a private buyer, it's not something that meets the criteria for an upcoming auction. We'll work with them and maybe put the asset on rally or vice versa. But the auction structure is one that to me always has to exist. And I buy stuff at auction every single week at every auction house basically. And a lot of times the stuff that they're getting, because they're dealing in volume, there's going to be one or two of those really crazy pieces. And those are the ones that create these headlines of like, Honus Wagner card sells for $4 million. That for us, when an auction house does it, when a Golden Auctions or one of the big auction houses does something like that, it's a huge win for us too, because we have one too. And we have one that might be undervalued relative to what you've seen in the headline, or it might not even be a card or an asset or an item you knew existed. So when those auction houses have these huge sort of monumental signature auctions and they're printing new world records, for us, that's really sort of a good relationship for us to always be in, where we're in the conversation. We've always tried our best to make sure that we maintain those relationships and that the people that are paying attention to us are the ones that we're paying attention to too. We've been lucky in that all the major auction houses we have some relationship or a partnership or something that we're working on to make sure that like their buyers know what's going on Rally and that everyone on Rally knows what's going on at those auction houses too.
We had a user question I think is interesting. Someone said, how does this compete with the Logan Paul back liquid, which I know is kind of similar, right?
Yeah, so Logan and I talk, and we've talked a lot over the course of the last like 3-4 years about as we started building this business. And he was super into Pokemon, and we had a bunch of good Pokemon stuff. We had a bunch of mutual friends. So before they launched Liquid Marketplace, him and I had spoken a bit about what the future of this space was going to look like, what fractional was going to look like. And I think that there were two pathways. One was going to be crypto and crypto native. And it was going to be something where, microtransactions and like penny and very, very low share price for users who were very crypto native and had potentially made some money on crypto during that crazy bull run, were able to turn it into tangible assets. And that's kind of the route that Liquid Marketplace went. And that's one that for us, all these assets on Rally are securities. They're all qualified by the SEC. We're not trying to sort of create a world where we're walking a line. Like these are definitely traded similar to the way that stocks would be traded, and they're treated as such. So everything we do has to go through that SEC qualification process. It's all public on Edgar and SEC.gov. If you search for Rally or for RSC or any of our individual assets, you'll find like the 80 pages that explain every risk factor, the asset description, all the comparable data that goes with it. We put all that in the app as well. So for us, there's, when we came out, it was pretty clear that like this idea could work. And once it started to work, you assume that there's gonna be competitors that pop up. But in reality, it's hard for us to look at anybody else and say like, I don't like what they're doing. Everybody does it a little bit different, but it's also, not to sound corny or say the thing that everybody had the political answer, but the rising tide does help all boats. And we're one of those boats right now. I think, and I know that we're at the head of that when it comes to sort of activity and user growth and AUM and some of the pieces that you look at tangibly and say like, oh, that's the bigger one in the space. But also I know that we share a lot of users with a lot of these platforms too. We're trying to give them the opportunity to do something where the checks and balances are in place in a way that it goes through a similar process that you're used to with equities. And when it comes to museum quality stuff, we're looking at the Declaration of Independence, and we're looking at the $1 million and $2 million and $3 million items now a little bit more than we were early on with the $20,000 and $30,000 and $40,000 items too. So, long story short, like I only get tight with and like a little bit mad when people start using like the same origin story as us, and no one's really done that anymore. No one's made believe that like everyone uses that same line, like, well, we're trying to tighten the wealth gap, and we're collectors too, and all these things that like that's our story. I don't want anyone using that story anymore. Like when I hear that, I'm like, get out of here. But Logan and Liquid Marketplace haven't really done that, so I can't really knock what they're doing.
We are an investing channel, and so I know it's on everyone's mind. It's on my mind every day. I'm looking at collectibles the same way I look at anything else. Where's the opportunity now? So I've been thinking about the collectible space for so long, and I always find, I was a kid that invested in baseball cards that are completely worthless now, like
Same,
complete, like
same,
they're
dude.
the worst. the worst of all worst. And it really turned me off to collectibles, quite honestly, for a
So
very
true.
long time. I'm also a kid that used to garage sale merchandise back in the day, right? Like I'll flip anything. But when I think about collectibles, I think there's one big issue. It's both an opportunity and a detriment in that a lot of the sectors like sports cards and cars, for example, it's it's really obvious when they peak. They peak at a point when people that have an interest in that type of player or that particular car, because they that was the car when they were 16 or 18 years old, when that person gets to an age to where they're at peak wealth and they actually have the time to start investing and stuff like that, it seems like that's when those things peak, and they inevitably always fall after that because at some point nobody saw that basketball player or that baseball player. Now, there's obviously icons like, Babe Ruth and certain players that everybody just knows throughout history, but for the most part, they kind of ebb and flow with the demographics and the age as people age. And to me, that's bothersome. However, there are other sectors like history, like quite honestly, media cards, like Pokemon, right, is something that theoretically can live on forever, and every generation could theoretically fall in love with Pokemon over and over again. Those things are more interesting to me, and so that's kind of how I think about it. Things like whiskey that I know have been getting hot the last few years, like that's something that you're not going to like. That's not going to fall out of favor in 100 years. People, well, maybe it will. People might stop drinking in general and becomes like this weird thing that nobody can relate to alcohol in 100 years. So that's kind of an issue too, right?
Yeah. But then the
Where do you
collectibles
think?
versions of it, the old bottles that were worth $200 now are going to be worth way more because they don't make them anymore.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you had to pick a sector that you were really excited about going forward, whether, regardless of watches, like, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
give us a few sectors that you personally, because you have your finger on the pulse of this market, like, you're in this world every day.
Yeah.
What does your
What
gut tell you
sectors?
is a really cool sector?
What sectors
Yeah.
are hot right now and getting hotter? And is there like a holy grail item that you would love to see on the platform?
Yeah, and I'll start this by saying, not investment advice is not investment advice is not investment advice. Just so that lawyers don't text me right after this call. But I'll say this, Chris, everything you said is true, right? This is the difference to me, is that everything is always too risky to the previous generation, and everybody's always been told when it comes to alternative assets and collectibles, like very small percentage of your portfolio, and just think about it as like funny money almost more than anything else. That's just how it is. Like in the 30s and the 40s, like stocks were too risky for pension plans. You know what I mean? Everything was all bonds. And it's just like the 60s come and now like they're integrating stocks, but then like REITs come out of nowhere and now REITs are too crazy. And it's like, what are we doing with those? And now it makes up, 3% of the S&P, whatever the weighting is. I have no idea. Then it was crypto and everybody's talking crazy. Every bank CEO, crypto's a scam. They're still saying it, but they all have trading desks like for every Bitcoin, ETH, whatever else. This stuff is at a point now that the one big difference between like those trash baseball cards of the 80s and 90s that I also like, if I had $6 to my name, like $5.50 went to cardboard that is worth zero now. Like a 100% is great to have. I go back to my mom's house at Christmas in Brooklyn. I'm going through my old stuff. It's all meaningless, but the emotion is still there. I think that's the one piece that changed. Everybody's been told their whole life, do not use emotion investing. That to me is entirely wrong. So when I think about the asset classes and the sectors in particular that I know are important or I think are hot, they're all based on relevance from when I was like younger, but also what I know is going to be relevant in the future. So to say Pokemon, a top 10 franchise just from an entertainment and like a licensing perspective is not going to be important, 30 years from now would be crazy. The same way it's hard for me to say like Mario Brothers and Nintendo. And that's like a space that during COVID, I was really active and was buying sealed video games. We've sold Mario Brothers, the highest graded version of all time, was a $2 million sale, the most expensive video game ever sold. That record will probably hold for a significant period because it was at peak too. But I started buying crazy amounts of video games because I'm looking at it like the scarcity value is there. They made 40 million Mario Brothers. There's probably 300 that are still sealed. Having one of those to me was really important. And even in a down market, I look at it like in the future, Nintendo and Mario is this omnipresent, super ubiquitous character that there's still money, steam, and brand behind, and that's going to exist in the future. So those are the ones that we look at in terms of categories that I look at personally that will stand the test of time and will have, peaks and valleys along the way. But they're also things that are going to be important to the next generation, to your point. And that goes for like the things on Rally. When I think about like the Declaration of Independence and like Abraham Lincoln, it's hard for me to say that's not going to be important in the future. When I look at something like dinosaur fossils, which, they've been hot for 60 million years, like they've been a thing, you know what I mean? Like it's not going away. And it's also one of those things where you start to see bits and pieces of it in the news where, celebrities are starting to put them in their living room. And our Triceratops, which is named Deaton, which is a really important Triceratops because it's, 68% bone density. I can give you all the details on it that make no sense to anybody and don't matter. But it's also one that, like, candidly, we had to fight a really well-known tech entrepreneur to get that one because he wanted it in his living room. So when people walk in, he goes, "That's my dinosaur." Those are the spaces to me that were hot when I was in 5th grade. They're back around now. They're constantly in the conversation. There's an auction result or something once a year that turns into this pop culture conversation. They're in the zeitgeist now. They're going to be in the future. If there's a franchise, if there's an item, if there's a conversation that you've been hearing about for 30 and 40 years, and you think that's not going to be important for the rest of your life, that seems like it's a personal shortcoming where you're saying like, nah, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. That's the stuff that I try and stay away from personally, that I think about when we buy things for Rally or when I buy things for myself too.
Yeah,
that was a very long-winded answer of a way to say that Chris is right now. I don't know if he's gonna be right in the future.
I just want to say that I would personally love to have a dinosaur in my house. That just sounds like the coolest thing ever. But I think that owning a part of a dinosaur is also pretty darn cool.
Yeah, that's if you have a T-Rex skull in your house, like you probably made it. You're probably doing it right. You know what I mean?
That's a good sign. Yeah, I only know one person who has a fossil in their home that, but that is definitely a sign that you've made it. Now, how do you like? Some things are probably easier than others to authenticate, but one of the things that this channel is known for is the disastrous trade of buying a box of Pokemon cards for $400,000 that ended up being fake. How do you avoid that sort of like problem?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have enough of a YouTube presence to make that back in ad revenue. So thank God we haven't had to come across. We haven't had to be in a situation that we blew the 400 yet. But that said, like everything's insured, and we always keep like the best of the best in terms of authentication and sort of the third parties that are the most well known in a space, whether it's for like photo matching for a jersey or it's like, PSA and SGC and the well known names in the card grading space. Or when it comes to books, part of our audit process is having like one of our advisors come in who's from one of the big auction houses, who's one of the most well-known authenticators of vintage literature. So we always have those checks and balances. Again, it's an SEC approved qualified offering, so it's all public domain too when we go through a process. But that said, it's going to happen at certain times. We had a Babe Ruth signed ball that was part of an FBI investigation. That was a $60,000 IPO. Oh, I'm sorry, but maybe it was a $40,000 IPO. It traded up to $60,000. And then we got a letter from the FBI that said something to the effect of, this is potentially part of a crime ring, but it had been authenticated twice. So it had been authenticated by PSA and DNA, and the PSA team kind of reached out along the way too. And as that process was going on, so it was one of those situations similar to like sour grapes type of thing, where there was someone who was just an awesome forger who was doing this with paintings, with Babe Ruth balls, with a couple of things that snuck their way into the auction circuit at some point 15 years ago. By the time it got to us, it had all those checks and balances in place. But that's the difference between like what we do and like a trustless third party that's doing just crypto, is that we're on the hook for a lot of that stuff. So like it's insured up to a point that if there is an issue with the ball like that, we're able to sort of make everybody whole again. And we have to take it out of operating. Like we stand behind everything that we put on the platform too. And we're investors, like a small percentage of each individual asset, and we can't sell till the whole asset sells. So that for us is leaning in on people who have that domain expertise, the biggest names in the space for authentication, the biggest names for sort of qualification of each individual asset. And then like if it gets messed up along the way, it's on us kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Rob, one of our regular followers, Lisa Autry, had a really interesting point. She says, how about creating a YouTube channel maybe to get traction, possibly when you're doing your IPOs, for example, right? Like that'd be really fun to have, like when you do an IPO, to have it be a little bit more interactive, and you could have an expert really kind of explain the history behind an item while the IPO is happening, maybe through like a YouTube live or something like that. Have you guys thought about that as
Yeah,
like
100%. We're doing it. So we started paying a little more attention to YouTube over the course of the last couple of months. And we started loading our channel with a bunch of really good deep dives on content. We've done a couple of like Ask the Expert style live streams right before an asset went public. But it was kind of like dipping our feet in the water to see if that was an opportunity that we should be capitalizing on. So now, we're probably a month out from really putting steam, putting a little bit of money and putting attention behind that to make sure that there is the element of like social selling. We're also, kind of, we did a couple of interviews about it, so it's not completely behind closed doors at this point, but we're working on a TV show that kind of goes through the whole process of finding all the way to the point of the IPO, where it could be real sort of, social commerce and live commerce during the process of airing of each individual episode. So that for us is like, this year is really about preaching the message of what we're doing in a way that opens it up to more than just a community that's been inside of Rally, to put that steam behind it and bringing those to life in conversations and doing it through live streams, more real live events, which is why we have our museum space that we're opening up next month, which is why we got this big new office that we've outfitted in such a way that it can be a real sort of meeting spot for the collectible community here in New York. And we're going to expand that footprint all over the country. Part of it is for that reason, and that reason only, is like we want to make sure that if we have a great story to tell, because all these individual items, they're the museum stuff and they're the most expensive stuff, but each one has its own story too. And it's so interesting. And if we have to do a better job of getting that interesting content out on more than just like a Twitter channel, on more than just our Twitter stream and more than just these type of conversations, which is why we're basically doing exactly what the question was around, starting probably in like a month. We're going to get way more active on YouTube and doing live streams.
I'm on Rally Road right now, and I'm looking at a 1972 Nike prototype moon shoe with $180,000 initial market cap. Can you just, because someone was asking about sneakers, right? Like, what do you think about that sector? Because I have 12-year-old twins, boy girl twins, and both of them equally, and all of their friends almost are like into shoes, sneakers in a way that never existed when I was their age. Like it is so mainstream, the concept of spending a lot of money on sneakers and sneaker culture. It used to be like a niche, and I feel like now it's becoming mainstream. Like, what do you feel about that asset class going forward?
Yeah, that hits on this thing that for me it was really important too. Like I got out of school in the early 2000s. I'm sorry, when did I get out of school? I got out of high school early 2000s. Call it mid to late 2000s, where like I'm coming home from college and I'm in New York, and New York is this epicenter of like sneaker culture and music, and all these things were converging at the same time. Like social media wasn't really a thing yet, but all I cared about was sneakers. But I didn't think about it. It wasn't commoditized back then the way it is now, because like flipping sneakers was an idea. But now, like, I have a crazy amount of sneakers that I wore. And I had really good relationships just from like being in New York with people who owned all these sneaker stores. So I would go every Saturday and get like whatever the new sneaker was at retail. And now I look back and they're like crazy expensive, but I always threw the box out. I always wore them at least once and then held on to them. These kids now, they treat everything a little bit like a business, even if it's just buying sneakers to have them. Like they know the details and like the pricing structures and like what's hot and what's not in a way that like I never ever did. So I've always looked at sneakers as like this thing that I love and I care about from a design perspective, from a utility perspective, but I didn't think about it enough as an investment as a kid. And in retrospect, I probably should have. I'd have a little bit more money tucked away now if I did, just from the access that I had to it. But this goes back to like Josh Ellman, who a product genius, was at Robinhood and like really well known in the space, and he goes on these epic sort of Twitter sort of like mini threads where he's opening up like his brain a little bit. And one thing he talked about recently was private social togetherness, and it's this phrase that I'd never heard before he said it. And it's like these little worlds of like the 14 to 21 year olds. I see it happening a lot where they get together and it's a small group that gets behind something, and they have enough kind of social capital, enough influence to make it a big thing later, but it's just their thing to start. So I think we're starting to see with sneakers where it's the polarizing sneakers that come out. It's happening right now with this Tiffany collaboration that Nike's doing. There's going to be like a small group that has access to those that either makes it a thing or kills it. And it's going to be a very hit or miss scenario, I feel like, with those. But that's what's happening. I feel like when you have one friend who starts wearing like dirty Air Force Ones and that becomes like cool, now you have like 5 or 6 kids start to do it, and then like 20 more, and now all of a sudden all over Soho wearing dirty white Air Force Ones, like this is like 9-10 months ago, was more of a status symbol than wearing like, you know, Gucci or Balenciaga or anything like that. And that's happening way more often now with those groups of kids, and they're going to be the ones that dictate what's important in the future and what becomes investment worthy. So sneakers in my mind are definitely going to be there, you know. That was a wild tangent I went on, because it's like I'm very opinionated about sneakers and about what like a 14-year-old's doing right now, because they're going to dictate what I have to be doing if I want to stay relevant.
Chris,
Dude,
you're going to be amazing when
comment,
you wear all of your Air Force Ones, Chris. Just start wearing them in Soho now, and you'll really fit in.
Yeah, I do wear them. The difference is, like, my son got a pair of sneakers that were pretty cool, and I split it with him. I think it was like $180, so he paid half. And he's like, dude, I can't wait to go get these roughed up. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm taking them to the park to get them dirty. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And like, he's like, no, it was so over my head that I didn't even realize that was a thing. I thought he was just being weird. But yeah, he wanted to like get the sneakers really dirty, not just like he really wanted.
It's got to be authentic dirty, not, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's got to be like and that's what these kids care about. Like they think about things as like what the value to me versus the value of the actual item. The value to them is going to be way more important if it's like personalized and it's part of their small group gets it. And I think that's going to dictate so many like investing trends now are going in that direction too. It happened at GameStop. Was that it was a small group that understood something and they saw around a turn that others didn't. And to me, watching that happen was just like absurd. But then I jumped on board. Like, I'm not going to not buy AMC at this point. You know what I mean? That's where I was, because like an 18-year-old dictated that's the direction it was going.
Jacob Crowley asks, he said, there's been a huge spike in people playing chess. You guys know, he's talking about stocks, but I'm thinking like that's interesting to me, because a lot of times we will see something start to trend, but there might not be a way to invest in a public company that would benefit. But in the case of chess, I didn't even think about this. We actually had an episode right when Queen's Gambit came out. We were like, dude, we were seeing searches for chess like we've never seen before. And I was like, but there's really not a good trade. Going back, now I'm thinking, man, was there a super cool chess collectible that probably would have been so off radar because no one was really paying money for like chess collectibles? But I'm thinking a company like Rally, it would be cool to have you guys have like a speculative division that's going out there that's really quick on stuff, making speculative bets, like the best of something that might or might not be anything, right? I think that would be super cool.
We're gonna be doing that. That to us is the direction we want to go. And you want to be able to sort of have assets and have sort of buckets of assets that fit every risk profile. Like the chess example is perfect. Like that for me, as soon as that became a thing, like I bought a bunch of copies of the first edition of Queen's Gambit just because like they were relatively cheap and they weren't going to work for Rally because they were still like under $1,000. And even the Walter Tevis signed versions were like relatively cheap. There were only so many. They had great cover art. To me, it looked like it made sense. So I bought a few of those to have. I gave a couple away.
What do you mean? What did you buy? Did you buy I don't understand what you mean when you say you bought Queen's Gambit.
Book. So I bought the original book, the first edition of the book that it was based on. But because there was for context, that's a great question, because there was no equity equivalent that you could ride that trend. You could buy like really like well-made chess sets, and you could buy like some of the early sort of Kasparaitis style, like the tables that they played on and the timers, and like all these sort of, you know, artifacts from like previous generations of chess players. But it was an obvious cultural moment, and I was trying to be part of it. And the only access was like the first edition of the book that I felt like was something that was investment worthy, but also a cool thing to have. But doing buckets of stuff like that, when there's something we can key in on, whether it's like a cultural tailwind or like a Netflix series or whatever it is, and make that part of like a speculative asset bundle, is something we're working on right now too, for sure.
I love that, man. This is so exciting because it really expands the optionality for like we're observational investors, and that's what the dumb money community is about. It's about seeing things in the course of your everyday life, or, you know, data mining on TikTok or Twitter or YouTube comments to try to understand how culture is shifting and how consumer behavior is shifting in real time. And then we try to connect those dots back to investable opportunities in the stock market. But like I said, 9 times out of 10, there is no opportunity to connect the dots back to an
Yeah.
investable, asset in the market. I love what you guys are doing, and I love the collectibles market in general and alternative assets because it broadens the opportunity for observational investors like us to find ways to monetize a shift in culture or a shift in consumer behavior. This is why I love this space, and I love the fact that you guys are doing what you do. So anybody with even $10 can participate in the best of the best of whatever that niche is, that collectible niche is that is trending, or
Yeah.
hopefully, in the process of trending in the future.
Dude, I mean, it's like dumb money is not just as a term is not a bad thing anymore. Like that to me was always looked at as a super, like when I was younger, I got murdered in 2009. Like I had just had a little bit of money. I blew all of it on just like bad growth stocks. And then I got super nervous and never put money back in. I tweeted about it during COVID and got like murdered in the comments. Like you're an idiot. How do you lose all that money this quick? You must have inherited a bunch of money and blew it through it. Like saying all these horrible things about me that weren't true. And I realized like I was the dumbest dumb money from 2009 to like 2013. But what changed is kind of what you just said, the idea of like brands and emotion and this concept that like people make decisions for the present and they do things that make them happy, but it's not it's not necessarily wrong anymore too. If you can see around that turn and you know where culture is headed, and it's so much easier to find that information now, whether you're just walking around Soho and seeing all the dirty Air Force Ones, or you're doing real research and in every Discord and having conversations with the experts, they're all going to tell you the same thing. It's like the buy what you love, but also like if you see something coming, there's a way to make a bet right now, whether it's on a rally or in the equities market or somewhere without a ton of money, that maybe you could take a flyer on it right now because you know something others don't, and then build that portfolio over time. We're just trying to do that same thing because everybody knows these things exist. There's never been access to it, but there's more information now about what's going to be important 10, 20, and 30 years from now than there ever was. So it's stupid to not use that,
Before on that note, before we wrap this up, I want to throw out an investment idea in the space, and I want to throw it out for Rally. Maybe you guys will put it on the platform. I doubt you have it yet.
I like that
So
you're going on
one of the
record right now. We're gonna owe you money now if this works out. Go for it.
All right, here we go. One of the themes at Dumb Money that we were researching, especially through the pandemic and over the last few years, is a massive tailwind in anime. And it's a global tailwind. And we've always been looking for ways to invest in anime, which is really difficult. We did find a few companies, a few foreign companies with ADRs on the U.S. exchanges. But there's One Piece is one of the biggest kind of biggest brands, media brands in that anime space out of Japan. I think they have over 1,000 episodes going back 17, 18 years. They recently released a table card game called One Piece, and they are in like the first edition of it. So it's like going back to 99 Pokemon first edition. And some of these, foil cards are now selling for thousands of dollars already.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating because this is a monster niche. The gameplay is supposedly phenomenal. The artwork is phenomenal. It's something that I think really like. I'm not saying it's going to be the next Pokemon necessarily, but I think these are really interesting niches because man, anime is huge and getting bigger.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like this is it. This is the game for this space. So like I think that's an area where new investors that they don't have $20,000 to spend on like a first edition Pokemon card, but want to take a little more risk, they can look at niches like this, like One Piece. And I assume I would love to see Rally maybe doing some speculative stuff like this as well, because it would give you the larger gain. It would give your audience the ability to get the larger gains, because some of the best One Piece cards right now are like a few $1,000s, like a few thousand, like to get.
100%.
Yeah, and it's
that's
still too expensive for most investors to spend few $1,000s, right?
We could also, like, we can get batches of cards or figures or like original artwork from anime too. That hits in on the exact thesis that we had. It's that, and we talked about a little bit during this conversation, 1,000 people who really, really care about something, know everything about it, want to, and live their life around it, have every conversation in their group chats around it. Finding the best thing for them and turning that into the syndicate is kind of what we're thinking about for the future for some of those like the less valuable but more speculative assets that are still at the start of that curve. So we started thinking about it with, like, Pokemon's the perfect example, because the Pokemon did its thing for like the 90s kids. The next generation got like a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh and some other franchises along the way. They're still undervalued because, to your point, those kids haven't turned 30, 35, 40 years old yet, where the money that they need to sort of turn it and put the fuel behind that asset class doesn't exist yet. But we'd be dumb at Rally to look at it and say that's not going to be the case if history has proven that the one that came before it did just the same thing. I personally bought like a bunch of Fortnite and a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff during COVID, because to me it was just pretty clear that that's a franchise that has all the similar dynamics that Pokemon did, but with way more exposure to a huge group of kids right now who are going to really care in 10 years. So that, for us, like, we have a couple ways we're going to do that. Just acquiring the assets and doing the $5,000 and $10,000 items is something we've done more of. And we'll probably batch that up into like our version of an ETF maybe. But there's other things that we're thinking about right now that allow you and 20 friends to form your own kind of syndicate on Rally. And then we'll go out and find the best version and put it into your portfolio with you and your friends. That's what that's what gets me excited too, is allowing somebody who's got like 20 friends who care and everyone's got like a few $100 to spend on the best thing. We can do all the dirty work for you and make sure that you get that in your portfolio now. And that's a lot of what we're thinking about for the future.
Dude, that's awesome.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Trying, man.
Thank you, guys. What else do you have on the product roadmap there? That's a feature that I had not even thought of that I could totally see using.
Our VP of product, Andy's going to murder me for saying that just now. I don't think I've ever told him that. But anyway,
it's a Dumb Money exclusive.
Yeah, Dumb Money exclusive. The in-person stuff for us is really, really important. I think that the museum space that we're building now, the way it's set up, and everyone will see it in March or early April, likely late March. When you walk in, it starts with dinosaurs and then goes into like the early classic cards, goes into baseball cards. And then as you move into the back of the space, it's really like a timeline that opens up into like a huge full screen experience with NFTs and what we believe the future is going to look like. So taking people on that journey and doing it in a way where we can kind of turn events into a part of this business that's really meaningful. We're on a street in Soho. I'm looking out our window right now on Broadway. One across the street right here is the Slime Institute, which, like, you go in with kids, you make slime, and everybody spends like $500 and leaves with like a mess, a disaster. Like 6 doors up is a museum of ice cream. We're in the middle of the winter. Right now it's like 6 degrees. There's still a line to get in to get ice cream and to have kids jump in like a germ-infested pool of sprinkles. Nothing wrong with it. I hope I did it when I was a kid too. Everyone does it. But that's like another $600-700 that they're going to spend that day just for you and your family. So to do something where
we've been there, actually.
It's an awesome place.
By the way, you need to visit Dumb Money's ice cream place over on 65 Bleecker, catching ice cream with Dylan LeMay. That's our ice cream shop. It's not far from you, so definitely go down there.
Up. I didn't know that. How did I not know that? I'm definitely pulling up there. Are you kidding me? But these are these things that, like, it's this mix of like nostalgia, family, learning new stuff. It's just like the whole thing together. Why not do that here? But the difference is, instead of leaving with like a cup of ice cream and a T-shirt, you're leaving with equity in the most important thing that you didn't even know existed until you walked in the door. That for us is like a huge thing that we believe is missed right now. Everyone creates great experiences, great events, but when you leave, it's done. So for us, we want to sort of be part of that full life cycle where you can have money in a bank, you can have money in treasury bills, you can do equities, whatever. But like, you want to leave with something you care about, and it's likely to stay in your portfolio over the course of the next 10 or 15 years. Come to one of these spaces and leave with it. Leave with an actual piece. You can own it. It's the only museum where you can actually own what's on the walls.
And there's such cool things.
Bring it off the screen and into reality. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You have such cool things. It's like the coolest museum in the world. Like, I remember one of the early items you listed was something that I would just love to own. It was like an original WAS computer, an Apple I computer that's like made out of wood, and I'm sure that's in the museum, and then you can buy shares of that and walk out with a certificate. That's just such a cool like experience for like a history nerd like me.
Nah, and it's also a way, like, to be real, it's a way to monetize too. Like, we always think about, we built this platform, we have great investors, and like, they knew that this was something that was like, it wasn't going to be the overnight thing where all of a sudden it's not open AI, it's not going to take off and all of a sudden be like a $75 billion company. It took a while to get where we are, and they gave us the runway to do that, knowing that we were building a community that once we had them all on Rally, to find these 5 or 6 or 7 different ways to monetize and turn this into a real revenue generating business, and then even turn those assets that are stagnant into cash producing assets was going to be possible. So now for us, like doing it ourselves first, and we're never going to like franchise out the museum concept, but to say like one of our cars won't be in like a casino lobby, or one of these assets won't be on the walls of some institute somewhere where it can generate cash flow, almost like rental income for assets, is something that we've always wanted to kind of experiment with more too. And now with the space downstairs as the first kind of beta test case, we have the ability to do that as well, so that you can have Rally stuff and the stuff you own be like close to home for you, and in a place where you are, where other people get to see it, and you're an actual owner in it. That for us is a way to sort of make people happy and make a little bit of money for the business eventually too.
I love this, man. And I can't wait until we find the next big thing that we could only figure out how to monetize through some expensive collectible, that will form our own dumb money group, go to
Right.
Rally, and then
Yeah.
the dumb money group will collectively get to own that piece, however much it costs. Like, that's going to happen at some
Yo, let's
point.
do it. I would love nothing more than to open this app one day, scroll once to the left, and see like the dumb money collection. You know, like I want that more than anything. Trust me.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Jordan, you have
Thanks,
anything
Rob.
else? Are we good?
No, I've really enjoyed this. I think it's super cool. I think there's a whole lot more depth and nuance to what you're doing than it seems at the surface. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you,
When
man.
is the New
Appreciate it.
York Museum open? And what's the address?
Likely end of March. We're going to do like a really, really big sort of publicity push once that happens. You guys be the first to know. But it's something that we've been working on for 5-6 months at this point, and it's like it's close to the bells and whistles have to get added, but it feels livable. So we're probably like a month out.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for everything you're doing at Rally. I think this is actually a super big deal for observational investors like us. And man, I can't even wait to see where Rally goes the next 5 years. I'll be there at the New York Museum the minute it opens. I can't wait.
Nah, dude, I appreciate it. Likewise, and thank you for the vote of confidence early. And you know what you guys do is very much in line with what our users and our investors are looking for. They want to be in the conversation. That's it. And you guys make that possible too. I'm looking forward to the next 30 and 60 and 90 million that you guys print.
And wait, anybody can sign up for Rally Road. It's free, right? Just go to rallyrd.com and it's free, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you can download the app in the App Store, search for Rally or Rally Road. We're only available to invest in the US, but that's going to change at some point in the near future.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
We'll
Appreciate
check back in with you in a little bit, but that was awesome. Chris, Jordan, anything else? We have the market up right now. We have Apple has recovered. Anything else you want to talk about today?
I had hedged my Amazon, 50% of my Amazon, and then it's still down. I got out of my hedge. I don't know, man. The market, I don't know. I don't know anything about this market from a macro level. I told you that like the last 10 shows. I'm going to focus on,
So here's what's going on in the market. There is a 0 data expiration explosion going on right now, and so people are bidding up things like Tesla, the Nasdaq, the SPY, just using 0 DTE call options. It is mania again.
Wait, what is that, Jordan? What are you talking about? What?
What's that? So there's like record-breaking options buying right now in all sorts of things.
There is kind of this weird mania going on. There's record-breaking options, very short-term options. I saw the inflows to like the
0 or
QQQ
1 day.
and the SQQQ just like off the chart.
Yeah.
But that's not like retail investors, is it? Like that doesn't make sense.
There's some, right? So I think that's a misconception, right? Because they're obviously participating in it. But no, I mean, at the volumes that are going on, I think it has to be institutional.
Yeah. There's no narrative there where I would see retail investors suddenly.
No, I don't think so. I think there's something else going on in the market. I don't know what it is. I'd hate to speculate, but it is kind of, it's been a bonanza the last few days.
Well, that's because the Fed said, "Hey, everything's good. We have disinflation coming."
So guys, I want to end this show by saying that I didn't mention it today, but I actually do have another collectible investment that I am just super excited about. I haven't told you guys even. This is not the One Piece. The One Piece I think is actually super interesting, that TCG game. But there is one I'm super excited about. I'm working on it, and I want to have a dedicated show on it because it's the type of thing where I think our community can do their own homework and get involved. And I think it could be one of the biggest things in collectibles the next few years. So that's a show that's going to come at some point in the next couple months. So I just have more homework to do first. I want to tease that. And that's it, guys. Anything else?
It's Friday. You have weekend plans?
I'm actually going to we're doing a dinner tonight, which we don't do very. Dude, we've been locked in the house all week.
It's been a weird week of ice storm, and it's yeah. I've only left once.
Schools have been out for 5 days. This is the 5th day that they canceled school. 5th day.
I know.
It's unheard of. I remember when we went to the same school and they never canceled. It didn't matter if there was 2 feet of snow and
they went
ice
to school
storm.
on Monday, didn't they? So it's a 4th day.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Did they?
Our girls went to school on Monday. But yeah,
Dude, I don't know.
All I
know
is yesterday, and I went to the rodeo in Fort Worth. It was amazing.
Why did they cancel school today? There's like going to be 40 degrees. It's sunny. The ice is melted. It makes no sense to me at all. I'm so pissed off about it.
I took Peaches for a walk today, and in the shade there is still some ice, and so there's
there's still slush.
Oh my!
But they would never cancel school. Back in our day, they would never cancel school for a little light.
Yeah, I know.
Slush.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching We're Dumb Money. We'll see you here next week.